Hi everybody, welcome to another session of The Open Book in the Sherry Grover Gallery at the Bainbridge Museum of Art. Today we have a real pleasure in store for us. One of my favorite book artists and one of the wackiest people I have ever known in my life is here. And her name is Donna Snow, and she has been plying her trade in as an artist for 40 to 45 years?
50 or 60?
50 or 60, maybe 75. I mean, certainly from...
Long time.
Yeah,
Long time, yeah, who's counting?
A very long time.
And that's my husband, Robert.
And Robert is coming and joining the group. Donna got her bachelor's degree and her master's in art and art education, I believe specializing in printmaking, and she has taught for many, many years, and for the past dozen years or so has specialized in collage, which is the putting together of things from different sources. I realized that there is a two-word phrase that absolutely summarizes her or her work, and that is brilliant fabrication. Now, fabrication in the physical sense means putting things together out of other things. And that's what she does with her collage. Fabrication also means making up stories out of whole cloth. And I think that's Donna's absolute specialty. Her myths, her stories, her legends, her fairy tales, they're extraordinary. So here is Donna Snow, and please welcome her.
Thank you. I have a little note thing because I don't want to, it's easily get off track. We could be here for a couple hours. First of all, we were listening, Bob and I, to audio tapes, which we do frequently, and in the car, especially when we're taking any trip, and we live in Ludlow, so there's a little time crossing the bridge, and sometimes waiting and so on. And we're listening to Salman Rushdie's fabulously funny, wonderful, wacky, crazy, and if you haven't read or listened, sometimes it's better, I think, because you can get bogged down in Salman Rushdie's tones sometimes, well, anyway, if you have a chance to hear a Salman Rushdie audio tape, you will understand why the Muslims are after him and have threatened his life and so on and so forth. He holds no bar. He just gets out there and lambasts everybody, but he does it with the most wonderful sense of humor and amazing, wonderful fabricated tales. And the one we're listening to is Bob.
It's something like 2 years.
28 days.
28 days, and so, you know.
And one night, or something like
title
it.
I just cannot remember.
But it comes to 2001 nights if you add it all up, which is his take on it, and it's just wacky. And it sure suits me because it's filled with the sort of incredible imagination that if you turn your own loose, you can do. So what was the original idea for Schools and Masters of Fainting? And I don't really have an idea to begin with. What I do is, and by the way, I taught printmaking, I taught drawing and painting in community college in San Francisco and in Marin County and so on. And so I do know how to draw, but I also hark back to my childhood with scissors. And there's something wonderful about cutting, clipping, and finding somebody else's stuff and rearranging it, fabrication, in its greatest sense of the word. So I do that. I take scissors and I sit down, and I don't use cheap magazines because the paper doesn't like to be glued down into position. I use quality magazines. National Geographic will have good pages, or books. And I go to used bookstores and find books that look like it wouldn't kill you to cut them apart, and I do just that. And then I just start cutting and laying out. I have folders, just folders filled with ocean, boats, people, pattern, and so on. And I've yet to find them in the new house we've just rented. So that's generally what, and so they're at hand, but often with an idea, I'll just, 2 o'clock in the morning, like a lot of seniors probably who don't sleep through the night, I'll be awake for an hour or so, and I'll think of something that will strike me as being funny. It might be a pun, it might be a real idea that I can grasp and hang on to about a cat or a dog or people and so on. So with, let's not go, oh, the other one is in the case. So it is Pigmentosum oceanum, and that is, here's a little copy that I did unearth, amazingly, with the stories. And the stories came after the fact. The first thing that happened was cutting, clipping a lot of Japanese stuff, and it came out of books of Japanese fairy tales, the crazy weird ghosts that are often that they often imbue their stories with, and in the old day believed in. And so I had all these cut pieces lying on a large cutting table, and then began to assemble them. And to show you how I do that without the book itself, because this is just the pages with the story.
Would you like me to pull the book out?
No, you don't need to. You can, it's the middle one, and it goes all the way across, and it starts with, it's Pigmentosum oceanum, and it is essentially the story of Oceanus, who's the son of the ocean king and queen. And he's at 6s and 7s. He doesn't know what to do with himself. He's a little bit bored. We've all gone through those moments. And so he decides he wants to become an artist. And so he becomes an underwater sculptor. Sculptor-er. And he then has a show in a famous under-ocean gallery. And he meets the love of his life. He marries her, they have a son, and then all hell breaks loose under the sea, and the dudes of the deep rise to the top, and there's a lot of friction going on. The monkeys come off the land, they want to see what's going on, and they get cheap transportation from Cheap Charlie, who sells thimbles that are leaky, and they're all out there in the water in their leaky thimbles, in their crazy hats. So you can see that these characters come from Middle Eastern carving, all manner of, mostly in this case, Eastern sources, except for the end where the parakeet came out of a bird book. And I just cut and I lay them out, and I start. This is a little more preliminary. That book really went page by page. I string beads a lot. Just, oh, I like this bead, and put it on. Oh, I like that bead, and put it on. I rarely lay out the entire book in advance. But I have a poem that I read to Cynthia a year ago about Rocky and Rosie. Rocky and Rosie were polymer clay and fiber dolls that I did for about 10 years. And Rocky was sold individually, and Rosie in her velvet chair went to a daughter in Florida, and a woman in California owns Rocky. And they were dolls about this big, and they had a story. Rocky became Jack's son, Paul Lick. And so Rocky asked Rosie, the cinema queen, over to see The Incredible Dream. You may not remember the film by that name, but Rosie won an Oscar in instant cat fame. Rocky's dazed by Miss Rosie's allure and envisions himself a young Vic dog mature. He leans in to slather Miss Rosie's sweet jowl and is greeted instead of a kiss with a growl. Poor Rosie's not torn betwixt romance and a film. Nah, she simply adores eating theater popcorn. So I thought, this would really be a fun book. So the polymer dolls are gone, the poem is still there. And so I decided that I would put together some kind of a book. And it occurred to me that it would be very funny to have a box for it that might be a litter box. So here is a Kleenex box, and this is something I collect around the house, are various boxes, and I tear things apart to see how they're constructed. That is not the case with this one, and it isn't the case with Figmentosum, and I'll tell you quickly about that. So I have a whole collection of wonderful little boxes that come in the mail for one thing and another, and I flatten them out and keep them around so that I can use them on another day or something like that. So I'm thinking that, and here is what I started just about 2 weeks ago, was beginning to put together just some sketches of real cat photographs, from real cat photographs and dogs, and then some cartoons, and then a cat box. Of course, I went online to look at a variety of cat boxes. The most beautiful is a Japanese cat box. Oh, it is wonderful, modern, with sliding door on the side, and it is just so cool. I loved it. So then I thought, well, okay, what if we put them in an overstuffed chair? That would be kind of fun. So then I did that. And then I just started collecting wonderful cats just as inspiration. Japanese, this is an early American needlepoint. This is Japanese ceramic. Here's a little mini litter box. And some wonderful old cartoons that go way back with and wonderful stories. I have to just quickly read you this one. Dame Wiggins of Lee and Her 7 Wonderful Cats, published in London in 1823, is subtitled A Humorous Tale, written principally, in capital letters, by a lady of 90. I'm very close, folks. On the cover, Dame Wiggins' portrait is painted by one of her industrious cats, a situation exactly opposite to that. Well, he talks about the Latour, and I didn't pull that one out. The cats were multi-talented, as page 6 of the first edition shows, in quotes. The dame was quite pleased and ran out to market, and when she came back, they were mending the carpet. The needle each handled as brisk as a bee. Well done, my good cat, said Dame Wiggins of Lee. Isn't that great? And so there's more. It'd be fun to look up the whole thing. And here's what the book looks like with a picture of the cat painting Dame Wiggins. And you can, I'll pass this around if you're interested. You probably can look it up. But that's the kind of thing that strokes my imagination, is going through things. And then, of course, this wonderful one that was, the Met in New York had a wonderful book of cats, the Metropolitan Book of Cats. And then I thought, you know, why don't I go back to my Asian roots here with the book and have the dog and cat dressed in Asian costume, and then just make cartoon heads. So yesterday I actually just cut out some kimono and then made some dog heads and stuck them on as just ideas. I don't know that I'll use it, but it's just sort of a process that's going on right now. And then these wonderful Japanese matchbox covers, which are just terrific, and a book that I got some long time ago, I've cut almost entirely apart, has lots of wonderful animals and characters and some of their gods and so on. So it's just filled with, here's a potential cat person. So she's very, very lovely. So I don't think she looks lovely enough. I think she looks a little too punchy. I think she needs to be more severe, more Hollywood of 1940. So that's that. You're welcome to, if anybody wants to bother. So that's kind of one way to come at it. The other way is what I said to begin with. It's just cut and lay out the pieces, scatter them around, as in Figmentosum. So of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think there were 8 pages. In any event, I really had the art before the story. And then I had to rearrange everything to create a story. And I was thinking, I'll just mat and frame all these individually. And then I got to thinking, wait a minute, this really would be a great book. But I don't know how to bind. And I've never taken a binding. Well, I took one very quick binding class, and it didn't stick. So I can sew, and I thought, having sewn a lot, why don't I stitch the collage down as well as glue? So that's when I began really doing a lot more stitching, and that's very evident in Figmentosum oceanum. It became a labor of love because I don't have free arm on my machine, and so it's tricky to turn pages that are this big on an area that wants to get crunched up as you would with fabric. But I managed, and fortunately rag paper's forgiving, especially the background paper that I used for those pages. I don't have any more of that. Lovely handmade stuff. Then I used vellum to do the printing of the story, and every page has a printed vellum story that faces it, so when you open it up, the vellum is on one side and the collaged illustration is on the other. So really it was, I know what really started it. A friend of mine from California sent me that fabric, and on every page across the bottom is some ocean-looking, watery-looking blue fabric. And there was just enough to lay out 6 or 7 pages, I guess. So I really started with Mary's fabric that she sent me, and then from there began developing pieces on top of it. So it's a mix of fabric, paper, sewing, gluing, and painting. Everything at the end most of it is overpainted. So it's a multi-step process that took a lot of months to complete. And then the story, of course, followed, and every page I repeated on a one-page back to slip in so that you didn't have to, do it this way. So then it was, okay, am I going to do these individually, or am I going to put them together as a unit? And decided that I really wanted to put them in a box, and I wanted to put them in a Japanese-style box. And I had wandered into William James bookstore in Port Townsend, which is quite a wonderful bookstore, and found this, which is a treasure because you can still buy it online, and it is absolutely one of the best box making books on the market. Ikigami, Japanese bookbinding. I'll pass it around. You can copy it down. If you can find a used one, I was lucky enough to get this book for, it was $21, but I got it marked down from that. And so I know you pay a lot more new for them. But it has just wonderful information on book layout and box layout to do stuff for your for whatever it is, even if it's not a book. I mean, you may just want to make some interesting, maybe a stitch collage fabric thing or something. What a lovely way to include. But believe me, when it comes to technical stuff, I have to defer to my really close friend, Shane Miller. And I don't know if there's any of her work in here right now, but she does the etched metal, and she's had pieces in the main museum and books here. She might have a couple pieces down at Bainbridge Arts and Crafts on display now, I'm not sure, but she's been in several shows this year. She's meticulous. She lays out everything with cardboard first, and it's exact. And until she has that layout, she doesn't start any well, for good reason. Metal's expensive. She uses copper and zinc and expensive metals. So there you are. She has to do that. But she also is just that way. She wants it to be absolutely flawless, and everything is absolutely rag paper, and it's just every tiny detail. And I'm a much more bootstrap person. I will take tins, like the little mint tins that you get in the store, like the little green ones Bob's gonna grab, and those are 3 tiny tomes and tins, and each little book went into those, but I love the tins, so I figured let's just use those. So I'm not quite as exacting and careful. I'm much wackier, although Shane is moderately wacky herself. Yeah, yeah, that'd be great. So that is a great resource to use. Now let's see, I don't want to forget things before I go to the other books, so we'll put this back in here. If you're vaguely interested in the story, it's here. I don't know that you really care. Oh, here's one of her little books. You can see she's etched the metal, and then inside printed the story on beautiful rag paper, and the printing inks. Everything is very carefully selected, and so her wonderful story goes on. It's a charming story, so I'll pass it around. You can look at that, and of course her hinging on everything she does is just superb. So there's Shane Miller. I don't know if you saw the angel wing that she had in the museum. Do you own the angel wing?
Yes.
Oh, it's about this big, right?
This is wing, yes, and it goes on. It's called If Found, Return to Icarus.
Yeah. So it is just wonderful. But I saw that in cardboard first, and it was pretty amazing to see every part of that done carefully in advance, as opposed to my bead stringing. So let's see. So original idea, oh Lord. Today we passed a sign, and it was, oh gosh, now I can't think of it, but it was some funny name, as our wont to, people who are naming streets in the Northwest. We have Indian lore to draw on, Indian history, wacky people who moved into Lipney Lane, and stuff like that. So yes.
Reminder, I think it was something like his and her RVs, true bliss.
Oh, try and find true bliss. Oh, if you want to find true bliss, and then it's an ad for a local RV company, his and her RVs. And here we were listening to Salman Rushdie. Couldn't have been more appropriate to have this crazy sign that somebody was serious about, that we each own. So here's a little example of one of the, it's a little Japanese book on monsters. And here's a fish monster. And this page was filled with stuff like this. And that to me is just asking to be a fish book. So that's the kind of thing. And then the idea comes from out of the blue, middle of the night, a sign along the road. Somebody will say, why don't you do a book about dogs and cats? I don't know. So that sort of thing. And then how did I put it into form? How do I put my ideas into form? Well, you just saw a kind of a more laid out idea thing, whereas sometimes it's just simply, and thank heavens for collage, because it allows you the freedom to lay all this stuff out. And I don't know how many of you have seen my big collages, not books, but the big collage. Some of them are quite large. They're full sheets of rag paper, black usually. And what's nice about that is that I can lay out the entire collage with just a little tiny piece of tape holding everything down until I'm really ready to glue and paint. And the big collages I don't usually sew. They're far, far too big to try and do that with. Punch maybe, do a little hand sewing possibly, but basically just paste, cut and paste like we did when we were kids to some degree. Let's see. And that's it. Somebody asked me when I was teaching a class, how do you take the whole thing, now you got the whole thing laid out, but you want to glue it down and you move all these pieces away. How do you get it back the way you had it? Well, there's a joy in having to rearrange it, one. And two, you take a digital picture. We do all have cameras now. My sister took a class with a group of women in my studio, and she took digital pictures, and she said, oh, thank God, I did. So glad that I did this, because I never would have put it back together close to this. So you can sort of sort out how you want to do that. Here's the little, what did I learn? That's a really good question. What did I learn? I think probably I learn every single time that I'll never remember how to do certain things, that I'll screw it up over and over again, that I'll put things on backwards, that I'll print on the wrong kind of paper or the wrong kind of ink. Some people have wonderful memories and they can retain everything they learn all the time. And other people, like me, I have to do it over and over and over and over again, or it doesn't stick.
It gets better every time, though.
It gets better. It does, because there is a process that you retain whether you know it or not. Isn't that true? You're an artist.
No, but my brain works the same way. So I screw stuff up, but then you have to solve that problem too.
Yes.
Which leads to other solutions.
Yes. And sometimes better.
Yeah, sometimes better.
Yeah.
Sometimes a lot better.
A lot better. So thank you, because that really is the way I operate. And there are failures. Heaven only knows. I've had the box for Figmentosum is standing at the end up against the wall. That box had to be remade about 3 times because I used a Japanese process, and I simply have a hard time following someone else's directions for patterns. I could never do that when I sewed. I tried to make clothes for my kids when they were little. I tried to make clothes for myself, and I could sew pretty well, and I could do things creatively, but I could not follow that darts, what? Tuck, clip. It doesn't stick for me. It's very hard for me to follow linear directions. And so bootstrap really very much is the way that I work. And so is the book the way I envisioned it? No, because how I start out, the process is ongoing, and it's probably the process that's exciting. I love the process of making, cutting, gluing, finding, and assembling. That is really just terrific. So I really wanted to leave time for you. I just want to open this up. This Schools and Masters of Fainting was a leather cover, this leather cover, on a very old book that I've hauled around for years that was Schools and Masters of Painting. A terribly pedagogic, horrible book about art through the ages, mostly European stuff. And this guy was actually on it. This was collaged and added. And I changed the P to an F and did a little wash on it with paint and stitched it onto this piece of paper, which got glued on to this cover. The cover itself, I bought in Italy. Bob and I went to Siena at one point. We lived in Germany a lot of years, and we drove down to Siena. And there in Siena was the most wonderful paper goods store. And I bought this beautiful folio. Well, it just got bashed up. It was a mess. It was all beat up on the edges and so on. So I thought, pulling it out of the cupboard, it's time to let this thing go. I almost threw it away, and then I thought, no, wait a minute. This is like an artist's portfolio. That was leading me more and more to how this whole thing ended up being constructed. I will cover it with some of this beautiful Japanese book cloth, and when I glued it down, then it wasn't wide enough. So I have the whole thing done, mistake, because this turned out to be way too thick, much too thick for what I had, which was about half this width. So I just thought, oh, what the heck. I just took a knife and cut it in half and added book cloth and doubled it up on both sides so that it's plenty strong enough to maintain itself. And as I glued it down, I realized there's this wonderful, as like a needle point or a dry point etching, there are these wonderful lines that were on the original folio that came through like I did it on purpose. One of those happy accidents. So here's this folio, and then of course inside I did more gluing with Japanese papers. I have a whole section of, some of this came out of the Schools and Masters of Fainting, the book itself, these horrible old engravings of these people, and some are not horrible, some are actually very interesting. And then I made little funny comments on them, and so on. So that went in here. The whole thing became a story within a story about an old aunt of mine who was sea dumpster diving, and she found a torn apart book. So in order not to create a whole book, it was only a section. So I have a little story from her to me, leaving this to me. And so that's what this is. It's dear niece and so on, and it's all tongue-in-cheek and silly. When I was in school, for a very short time, I dated a guy by the name of Billy Bingston. Billy Al Bingston became a very famous LA painter. And I haven't seen him since I was in college at Arts and Crafts as a kid. So I called my uncle Billy Al. You know, there's all this old LA stuff in here that only...
So recycle it.
It's recycled Billy Al along with everybody else. And so this is really too long to go into in this short time. So if you're interested in the story, you're quite welcome to read it. Here's the Dempsey, one of my grandsons with a wig on and sunglasses and so on. So the whole story goes on. Now here is this art that is stitched, and the fun thing about stitching is you get to see the pattern on the back side. When you stitch down something, you also get a double piece of artwork. And I didn't come up with this idea. I'm sure there are a lot of artists around who stitch. There's a French artist who does freelance figures, athletic figures, running, jumping, basketball, football. They're wonderful, and they're nothing but the stitching on paper. So, or maybe she did it on fabric. I'm not sure. I was sent photographs by a friend. So anyway, there's the one. Then I print on, in the case of pigmentosum, I printed on vellum. You can print on vellum on your computer. In this case, I printed on just standard rag white paper, and then mounted it on the vellum. And then surprises are so fun when you're doing things. So little doors open. Remember as a kid how you, maybe at Advent or Hanukkah, or there was something going on that allowed you to do something with it, to manipulate it. And I think that's that kind of surprise.
At what point do you put the words on? Toward the end?
In this case, I laid out the building that I wanted as the school, the primary school of Masters of Fainting, where there are teachers teaching you about fainting. And so I actually clipped that out and put it on, printed it, and then laid it out with tape.
But the words don't drive the books drive the words.
Both. Absolutely both. Sometimes the words drive the book, and other times I have all the pictures before the story really evolves. I'm beginning to think it through as I work, but it's a little bit of a mystery, you know, how your brain works. You know how your brain works. Some people, and I went to the lecture that was a lovely panel of book artists during the book show. The woman from the East Coast who can repeat the same book over and over and over again, and she, oh gosh, she was at the end up on the auditorium stage. She was at the far right. But she does everything methodically the same. I would go out of my mind. I could not do two things.
Well, it would never happen.
No, it wouldn't. So every page, and so here again, there was binding. How do I bind? And I thought, okay, I'll make separate signatures. Each of these, as you know, if you're a book artist, is called a signature. And some signatures have 6 pages, or if you open up a book in here, if you open up this book, you separate it out, you should be able to see the signatures where the thread comes apart. It'll open to that section. So I decided just to have 8 signatures, and or however many are here. And so then the numbers came after the fact, because I realized it'd be very easy to get them mixed up, and they are in order. And again, this was taking black rag paper, gluing down or tacking down Japanese paper, then stitching it into position, and then laying out what goes on the top of it, tacking it with a little tiny bit of tape or glue, and then hold so it would stay in place, and then stitching on top of that. And then some of these things like masters was added after the fact. And so then illustration left, wannabe master ruminating on scrunch-waisted pottery shape, that sort of thing. So the illustrations have, and then this is the school curriculum, the master school of fainting, and so on. So you can
Lots of late nights.
lots of long days. This was another one that took quite a while to assemble, and I just do love. Men did wear corsets, by the way, Victorian corsets. This is a real man's corset, if you can imagine.
Yeah.
Bad enough that and they were metal stays, and I love the ads. And then, of course, once you start looking at some of this stuff, it gives you more ideas. This is Warner's rust-proof corsets, so they did. If you sweated, I guess you rusted the corset for the distinguished gentleman. I think I added that part. And then I found things that had nothing to do with it, but that were kind of wonderful just to put in. So once you get cooking on this, you will just have more fun. These are two very famous Japanese actors, actually, in real life, who are long gone, I'm sure by now. And so they are hired to do demonstrations and model and so on and so forth. And so each page has, and I won't open every one, you may go through them. There's, of course, Prince Swami Swoony from Mumbai assisting Lady Faint Lightly from Australia during the class session held in New York in January 1889. The prince assists her into a conveniently placed sofa bed. She's fainted. So you learn this in school, that there are certain times when you can faint, and it's very cool, and times when you shouldn't. So that kind of goes on through the whole history of the school of fainting and so on. And so, and it spread to China. The schools opened all over the world, of course, and eventually corsets were no longer in. The poor professors had no way to make a living any longer. And so, let's see, is this? About 1920, the corset era came to an end. The demise was rapid for both the schools and the careers of the masters of fainting. The schools emptied as enrollment ebbed, leaving only a few of the most conservative, still corseted students. Eventually, all the buildings were abandoned or morphed into dance halls, speakeasies, or art schools. Some simply fell into rack and ruin. And there's a picture of what really is today is a pottery outdoor firing kiln. And it looked like a school in rack and ruin, so it made it household garbage was rife with used corsets and smelling salts. New clothing designers like Ralph Lorpschitz created flapper-style loose, low-waisted clothing, which was quickly adopted by women trying to relax their rib cages, breathe normally, and dance the Charleston. Snod and Company. We got mail. Our last name is Snow, and we got mail for Donna and Robert Snod, and it's stuck, and it's gonna be Snod forever, so it shows up a lot. And Snod and Company, grandson of Erasmus, who started it, and in the beginning you'll see his picture. Along with the Simposity Company, produced dozens of clothing patterns from mail order catalog. Simplicity, of course, is the title. While the women were busy making and selling patterns, it was rumored that a few of the out-of-work professors expanded into a new business called the Blue Ridge Boys, rectifiers of spirits. It was a success for 13 years. And there it is. They're hauling one of these big illegal tubs of booze somewhere. And then the ladies with their patterns, and school closed is the end. And then, let's see, this is a story about a dragon who always wanted pink toenails, and so she made a deal with the emperor, who had a beautiful who wanted a big brass bowl for his tea, and the dragon had the bowl, and the emperor had the pink toenail polish, and there's the manicurist or pedicurist sitting on top of the back of the dragon, who now has pink toenails.
Oh.
So it's and you know, I don't always make things stick down. I like little things sticking out. Sometimes I will even collage mats in the larger collages. And this is all done with polymer Liquitex. And I have to say that after probably 15 years of using Liquitex, or even longer, I started to get peely fingers, and it took me quite a while to get over that by using creams and various sundry things. So if you do use a lot of Liquitex, it's probably smart to wear those really thin vinyl gloves. Or just if you don't do it very often, it's not going to bother you. So the back side has some wonderful Japanese paper, or Asian. I'm not sure where it all comes from anymore. And the front side had my own paper. And this paper was National Geographic paper that I sprayed with, Citrusol. Do you know how to get citrus? Oh, it's so fun. Someday when it's warm and you can put stuff out in the sunshine, go get a bottle of Citrusol, not the spray, but the liquid. It's yellow and it's orange base, citrus based. It's healthy, safe, okay to use. You can put it in your laundry. It takes grease and sticky stuff off of things. It's fabulous just to have around. It's pricey, but meanwhile you can buy it at Town and Country. You can get it in most hardware stores now. It's very popular. So you just take a National Geographic magazine, and it's got some wonderful photographs with lots of great color. You open it up, anything after 1948. You open it up because of the inks. You take a brush, you put a little Citrusol, just a little bit, in a mason jar, and dip your brush in. It won't hurt the brush. And a soft brush, and you dip it in and you spread it all over the page. Just liberally spread it all over the page. Then you close that page and you go to the next page you like. And so you may have 20 pages in that one National Geo magazine that you've gotten all gooped up with Citrusol. When you close it, it softens the ink and it reticulates like watercolor. So it leaves these wonderful bubbly looking. This one has ice. I did some of this dry brush on top. Let's see if we can find any of that. There might be a little bit in here of just great texture. So you close the book and you put newspapers down because the black ink wants to get out of there fast and it's going to get messy. So you close the book 20 minutes, then you can peek. If you like what you see, you then tear the page out because it's soft from the Liquitex. You tear the page out and you set these pages all over your driveway. Or in my case, I put them in my mudroom because I was in the winter. And it's very strong, so it'll smell like orange oil for a little while. And let them dry. Before you use them for collage, be absolutely certain that you spray them with hairspray or any clear spray, because when you put polymer glues down, it'll smear it. And that might be something you want to do, and there are artists who take brushes and actually design right in that right in the Citrusol. So there are people who do sort of ghostly figures, angelic stuff, things that are not appealing to me, but it's available for that. Here's some really good reticulation. This is from National Geographic, probably a page that had a lot of brown. See those big knots? Now I went back in with a brush and did a little embellishing, but all these wonderful droppy spots are from National Geographic magazine where the Citrusol lifted the ink, reticulated. Kids love to do this. And every time I teach a class, I say, let's do that first. So they'll spend a whole day making pages, and then you've got a whole stack of dry pages you just stick in your closet, and when you want to pull it out, you look for the blues, the browns, the whatever the colors that you need. And then the rest of this is cut and paste from a chicken book. And if I don't see something I like, I can draw and I will add it. A chicken missing a head, I'll put a head in. Whatever. Feathers, these were wonderful feathers for the chicken queen. And the back, again, a wonderful egg that was in that same book. And some just great feather patterns. This is all chicken feather patterns on the back. And it's a lovely book, that's the key now. Be sure if you're collaging to use good quality magazine. Good quality book is better. So there you are there. Now, does anyone have questions at all? Because I can open the other two if you want to see them.
Sure.
first you put Liquitex all over the magazine pages? and
No,
then the
no
second-
Liquitex, just
Oh.
Citrusol.
Just okay, Liquitex. is
Only
another
Citrusol.
thing.
Liquitex is only for gluing
Okay.
when everything is dry. But it will smear printing ink from your computer. It will smear any inks unless you coat it with some clear spray first. Okay.
Donna, you want that, or do you want the
Which do you-
upside down dog?
Oh, upside down dog, sure. In the little purse.
It's in the,
My daughter Kimberly gave me some of these wonderful wood boxes. I wish I could say I made them, but I do a lot of found, so I'm going to put, like old lady, put my handkerchief up my sleeve. She gave me that little purse, and it was natural, yeah, and this. And there's another one I have at home, it's narrower, and I'm trying to decide what might fit in that, because it's very narrow, about the same length. And I don't know where they come from. Maybe some of you have seen them. I have never seen them in Joann's or Michael's or any of the stores that carry oddball stuff like that, boxes, where they have little wooden boxes, veneered stuff. But this was just simple, plain veneer. And I thought, oh, it's just a wonderful box for a scroll. So I covered it with various papers, glue, again, polymer glues. I painted the whole thing first so that it would accept the glue, and then glued down the cover. Had some fuzzy ribbon that I wouldn't have used for almost anything else but this. But because this is upside down dog, and there's the yoga position, there's the dog with a ball, balancing a ball. And then I used to do the dolls, and people gave me lots of old dresses, or I would go out hunting for them. And so I had all this glitzy rhinestone stuff and dog stuff, and then I painted that to look spotty and so on. So there it was. And then I had this is findings from jewelry making. This is a little brass thing. I guess you're supposed to put a little something, a stone or something on there. So I painted that. And then the inside, making a pattern for this was absolute hell for me, because it's very hard for me to make patterns that fit things, but it worked. It took several tries, and got the pattern and laid in this, and discovered when I put the glue down that I was leaving some marks I didn't like, so then I had to go in with a paintbrush, and all the little lines are painted on in between, so you don't see the bad spots. And then I cut the dogs out of fabric, which were so funny, little hot dogs, and glued them in. And the glue will leave things rough. So be sure you know that you want to be, if it's not something on the outside, you don't want it to be exposed. In this case, the glue is under this fabric, so it's smooth and you can feel it. Inside, it's a little rougher, but if you put your hands on the dogs, and you'll see how rough that polymer glue will leave that stuff. So that is for this scroll. And here's the scroll. And this is the upside down dog. It has a hand-dyed silk backing, and then scrap fabrics. This is lovely old Japanese. This is from a Japanese scroll. A friend of mine worked in Sausalito for a company that imported very old antique Japanese scrolls, artwork, and other things. And she was the person behind the scenes who illegally touched them up. So if the ship was missing a sail, she would paint it in. And she gave me a box of some wonderful scraps from that, some of the Japanese scrolls, and that's what that is from. So I collect, miscellaneous, all kinds of miscellaneous stuff. These are copper roving from boat making, and they're little tiny copper. If you take the bead off, there's a hole there. If you're doing a lap strake boat, it's got overlapping shingle on the side of the boat, lap strake, and they nail it in, but in order to hold the nail in, they use these beautiful little copper robes, I guess they're called, and they come in various sizes, so a lot of them are much larger, depending on the kind of boat and the finishing work. So if you go to a boat like if you go to Port Townsend, be sure to go into the, what's it called, the,
Chandelier affair,
yes, and they have drawers filled with this wonderful stuff. It's not cheap. I was a little stunned. I thought I was buying $7 worth, and I ended up buying $70 worth, and I was so embarrassed I just kept it. So I still have a lot of, I could build a boat. So there's the, and that is just wrapped around this to keep that the rough dogs inside from scratching the silk. And then this is the little book that goes with it. This is Upside Down Dog. Now I can make a simple book like this with stitching, but if you ask me to do some of the beautiful binding that you'll see in some of the books in this room, I'm at a loss, and I would love to learn to do some of that. On the other hand, I'm forced to do other things, and maybe that's just as well. Upside Down Dog, or Doggy Yoga. This is doggy yoga to help you limber up. Hard for a senior, easy for a pup. Regardless, get on your mat, stack up 6 balls or more, and on top a cat. Cycle them and keep them going. Watch your fatty overflowing. Watch your muscles start to hustles, and in the mirror, no more bustles, eventually. No more saggy waggy tails, only perks. Doggy yoga really works. That's the story.
Stunning.
And the last one, how's our time? Are we okay?
We're getting close.
Close? Okay. I've got the two, the bird book and that little one. That's great. Why don't you go ahead and open it and then just take the book out? Okay. This was another, and I just dyed it with wood dye and painted. This is a piece of leather that came off of that book that was on this cover. And there's the probably truer color. So if you find an old smelly leather book, hang on to it, because all you have to do is hold that over steam and the leather will steam right off the cover. This had this beautiful embossing on it, and then the birds are collaged on. And then this book was the precursor to this, which is, I'm glad we really waited. This little book was first, Ornitology, and it's a catalog of headgear for the avian set. And it's all, here's a spoonbill, of course, a fork and spoonbill helmet and so on. You can look at that in your own leisure. And so it's all about crazy bird hats available for sale and how much they cost. So it tells you, it describes, like all clothing catalogs. So that was first. And then I thought, you know what, I want to make a whole clothing book for birds. So for the book show this last April, I had 2 frames. You know, you go to art supply store and you can buy those wonderful hardwood, they're really, what are they called? They're called book boards. They're solid on one side. They have a frame holding them up. Cradle boards. They're called cradle boards. And they're for painting on directly. And they are wood. And I had a couple left from collages that I had done. So I put them together, covered them with paper. See, here's the book board was solid on the back, and then it's got a frame on this side. You can find them in any art supply store, cradle boards. And they come in all sizes, smaller and larger. And I thought, you know what, this is really a case. So I found hinges and managed to get the hinges on there actually pretty straight. And I dropped the hinges, because they were modern hinges, into various acidic solutions to get the shiny off, so that parts of the hinges look older, and that's good. And then it's covered polymer glues, all on the outside with paper, a couple layers of rice or Japanese papers. And then this is Birdie's Best Buy catalog. And Bertie goes door to door, is Salesman of the Year. You can see that there are lots of awards. Salesbird of the Year, Mrs. Bertie Budgie, 48, 49, 53, 65, 75, and so on. And so is the Salesbird runner-up, Miss Bertie Budgie, 1947. And then her granddaughter takes over the business, and so on. And there's Birdseed on there, of course. And she goes tree to tree selling bird clothing. And so these little cardboards is the story of each, oh, that's the front page. Avian Couture and Accessories, Birdie Specify Catalog, Sample Catalog. Be prepared to see and purchase the world's most distinguished designs in avian costume and accessories in the privacy of your own nest. And so then here are here are each one, and they're, of course, meant to be very funny. And then it has where you buy and how much the costumes cost. And each one, as I say, is different. This is the clock bird and that costume and so on. So they're... This is the Samaral vest. Yeah. Ah, yes, with the elegant and hunting helmet. That comes as a costume. And so you're welcome to pass those around if you want to see these and read them. And that some of it's stitched, again. And printed on my printer. This is my favorite one, so I will read you this one, and then I will not read you anymore because I think our time is up. This is the Broom Birds. There they are with their straw broomy hats. The Broom Birds, apparel for the artist at heart, follow the lead of this clever species which can be found only in New York City or Los Angeles. Broom Birds. These urban, charming, intelligent, and witty birds are always avant-garde and have taken to wearing arty apparel. They are excellent artists and are fond of painting and eating fish. Pictured here, two are wearing the species broom hats, bow tie, scarf, and refurbished vest. Nothing should match. The style has become amazingly popular with the younger 20-somethings in most urban cities today. The clothing illustrated is only found in this catalog or trendy little shops in Soho or the LA Goodwill. Place your order directly from me while the designs last. Please inquire as to availability and accompanying price list. Pieces are one of a kind. Prices range from 50 cents to $350. Or try your luck at margesbarge.com or lastditchfish.com. So there you are. That's how they look. The penguins have costumes for the whole family. Very expensive emperor penguins, of course. And this one was the Pelican Divine outfit. So that all went in here. And here are the clothing sample fabrics. And here are the order forms. And this nice little piece of fabric came from Turkey. The clothespins came from Michael's or Joann's. They carry them little bags and colors too. And one size up also. Yeah. So there you are. Those two boxes for painting on really became Birdie Specify catalog and case. And this was a find. I needed a strap because old suitcases had straps. And I couldn't find a strap the right size, so I went to the shoemaker in Port Townsend, and he pulled an old box out from under the counter, and they had a piece, but it was too short. And way in the bottom, he had a piece that was just the right size that he could cut and punch new holes in. And it had the old buckle on it, and it made the perfect. So, and that's what the small piece ended up being, the handle on the case. So there you are.
Thank you.
Thank you.